What's up, guys? Oh, I love you guys. You're so encouraging. Wow. I love it. Well, how's it going? I'll erase that later. How's your morning going? Good? Yeah? I love it. Well, welcome. If I don't know you, they just shouted my name. My name is Emily. It's nice to meet you. Nice to have you here with us this morning. I hope you... Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, Michael. If you haven't been here the past couple weeks, we have been in a series called Fractured, and we're asking the question, how do we live authentic, whole lives in the midst of a fractured world? Now, I think we can all agree that our world is fractured. We don't have to look very far before we see the broken and chipped pieces of the world. But how do we live wholly and authentically in that fractured world? This morning, I want us to talk about something that's close to my heart, but that will actually help us live that whole and authentic life within that. I want us to talk about submission to God and how it can actually change our lives and help us to live even more freely. So, with that said, I'm going to erase earlier services, so you have no cheating and you get to come up with the things yourself. What are some of the first things that come to mind when I say the word submission or authority? Just shout them out. Go for it. Say what? Assignments. Yep. Keep going. Guardians. Ooh, I like that. Guardians. Ignore my spelling, guys. Politics. Chores. There's an S. Politics. I heard chores. What was that last one? Turnitin.com. Don't write it? Okay, we'll ignore that then. I'll trust that voice. One last one. Go for it. Police. Yep. We'll turn that into police. Any emotions that those words, when you hear authority or submission, what? Strict. I like that. Yep. Strict. Yep. Any other ones? Fear. Ooh, that's a good one. Fear, frustration. I heard controlling. Yeah, those are all good ones, guys. I will honestly say I'm right there with you. When I think of the words authority or submission, my brain goes to that kind of stuff, that like strict, controlling, it's gonna suppress me. I just feel like I'm gonna be boxed in or something like that. It's gonna take away my freedom. I don't like those words, and I feel like I don't think any of us really like those words. I'll just talk for myself. I am a perfectionist, so when I think something needs to go a certain way, I'm like, man, I just want it my way. I want to control my own life. I don't want anybody telling me what to do or how to do it, because I want to have that freedom, and I don't want to feel limited or controlled in any way. And I feel like that's probably pretty normal. Anybody else in here super stubborn? Because I am also very stubborn. So with that, I don't want to be controlled, I have also that I'm very stubborn, and I have been since I was a child. I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, my mom, when it was cold outside, would be like, Emily, you have to wear a jacket because it's cold and you will get cold and sick. So you have to wear a jacket. And I was like, no, I don't want to wear a jacket. I will just tough it out. I don't need that. The cold doesn't bother me anyways, kind of thing. Yes, I was Elsa in this situation, guys. But she'd be like, no, you're bringing a jacket. She used her authority as my mom to force me to at least bring the jacket. And I was like, fine, I'll bring it. But I didn't say this out loud because I'm a quietly stubborn person, and I won't necessarily say it out loud, which is probably worse, guys, I will say, but I'm working on it. I didn't say it out loud, but I was like, fine, I'll bring it, but I will not wear it, no matter how cold I get. I am not putting on the jacket because I didn't want to let my mom win. I didn't want to let her have that authority over me because I wanted it my way. I wanted to not have the limits. I wanted to be free to do whatever I thought was best. And aren't we like that? We love to be able to just do what we want and go where we want and get what we want. And that the core of that, when I look at myself, the core of that is that I want freedom. I want to be free to get the things that I think will make me happy, the things that I think will bring me joy and fulfillment and a full life. And they don't always actually end up doing that, but that's what I want, you know? And thankfully, we're not the first people to ever feel that way, because I feel like that's probably a pretty normal feeling, is like, I want this thing. I want to hang out with those people because I think they're cool, and I think I want to fit in with them, or like, I want this thing that's even cooler than the thing I have that works fine, but that thing's way cooler, and I want that, and I don't want anybody to stop me from it. But James actually talks about this, so we're going to jump in to James. James is the brother of Jesus, and he's talking to some of the very first churches, so some of the very first people to ever believe in Jesus. And he says this, he says, "What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire, but do not have, so you kill. You covet, or want something that's not yours, but cannot get, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have, because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive, because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend it on your pleasures." Here's what he's saying. He's saying, you know, all that fighting and all that fractured relationships that we see out there, the jealousy, the hatred, the just quarreling, that all, we would think, oh, that's terrible, it's out there, like, it's so bad. But it doesn't just start out there. It starts within us. It starts with our desires and in our heart when we're like, I want this, and I'm not going to let anybody stop me from it. From that desire is what quarreling, fighting comes from. And I want to give you guys a second, because whenever I read the Bible, especially when they say a statement like that, I like to take a second and I'm like, is that true? Is it real? So when I read it, I was like, he's like, this is what causes quarrels and fights. I was like, is it real? If I think back, so think back with me right now to the last time you had a fight with someone, whether it be your parents, your friends, whatever. What was the core of that fight? And was it that one of the other of you wanted something and the other one said no? Or the other one was like, you can't have it. For me, when I saw this and I thought back to my mom's conversation, to the last fights I have, that is the core of it, is I want my freedom and I want what I think will make me happy, but someone else said no. And that's the heart of that. But God doesn't want that for us. He doesn't want us to be constantly fighting and hurting and wounding each other and all the fractures of relationships we can possibly imagine. What he wants for us, and Jesus lays this out pretty clearly when he talks about one of the reasons that he came. If we look in John 10:10, Jesus said, "I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." And that word abundantly at that end, different translations translate it different ways, and some translate it life to the full. Life to the full. Isn't that what we want? Like, we want life to the full. And that's why we're like, man, if I had that thing, or if I hung out with those people, or like, I would have life to the full. I would have abundant life. But Jesus says, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. And so often we're like, oh, but did he though? Jesus, I hear you. But when I read the Bible, I just hear a lot of do's and don'ts, and you can do this, but not that, and these rules and restrictions and limits and all this, the frustration, and it just feels like I'm being controlled. I'm going to make a statement right now, and then I'll tell you why, okay? Just bear with me. I truly believe that true joy and freedom comes from full submission to God. True joy and freedom come from full submission to God. Now, why do I say that? Well, I'm going to run an experiment with you guys. I need a volunteer. Alina, come on up. What's up? How are you, Alina?
I'm good.
Good. Come on, Alina. Give her a hand, guys. Come on up. All right, Alina. I would like you to tell me a story.
What story?
Tell me a story.
Any story?
Tell me a story.
Like what story?
Okay, let's try this. Tell me a 10-second story about a beach ball.
Anything about a beach ball?
Tell me a 10-second story about a blue beach ball.
Okay. A blue beach ball was used by this family to play volleyball, but then it rolled away into the ocean, and then they were hunting for it the rest of the day.
Wow, I love it. Awesome. So, was it easier when I gave you a prompt?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So why is that? We think, okay, as if I have no limits, if I'm free to do whatever I want and I can choose whatever I want, then I'll finally be free. But Alina, when I asked her, just tell me a story, she had the freedom, the complete freedom to choose whatever story she wanted. But she was like, about. And so when I limited how long it had to be, what it had to be about, even the color of the beach ball, I set those limits. And she felt so much freer to actually tell me a story, to actually be able to do it. And it's just one of those things where you're like, oh my gosh, limits actually make me feel more free because I know what I can and can't do, and I can make that choice easier. There's actually science behind it, guys. Don't take my word for it. Have you guys heard of decision fatigue? Yes, some no. I'm going to define it for us. So this is from a psychologist, defines it as decision fatigue is the idea that after making many decisions, your ability to make more and more decisions over the course of a day becomes worse. The more choices you have to make, the more it can wear on your brain, and it may cause your brain to look for shortcuts. There are 4 main symptoms: procrastination, impulsivity, avoidance, and indecision. That sound familiar? I get it. I feel it too. But it says the more choices you have to make, the more tired your brain is going to get. So by limiting what choices you can make, you actually make the decisions easier, and you make better decisions because of it. You following? Yeah. So this same idea is probably why your parents give you guys curfews. If your parents give you a curfew or a set time that you have to go to bed, it's probably because of this. They know the later and later it gets in the day, the worse decisions you're going to make because you've already made so many decisions and your brain is tired. And this is for all of us. That's the craziest thing about it is like we are all in this. It's not just one person. It's not just you guys as teenagers. Your parents probably feel it as well. They're like, man, I get tired and I make worse decisions. But they love you, so they're like, okay, we're gonna set some boundaries, we're gonna set some limits, because I don't want them to have to live with the consequences of what those poor decisions might make. It says it gives impulsivity is one of those choices. The thing of like, I'm just gonna do something. And you're like, I wouldn't have chosen that if I wasn't super, super tired. My mom, when she was like, Emily, you have to wear a jacket, was not just trying to like control my life and be like, oh, I'm just gonna have her be a little puppet. She was trying to protect me from the consequences of not having the jacket, of being cold, of getting sick and being miserable. She wanted me to have a full life, and being sick really is not fun. So she asked me, she was like, you have to wear the jacket, because she loved me, and so she set those boundaries. And God's the same way. Because he loves us, because he knows us, because he created us, he knows that it's actually helpful for us to have limits, to have boundaries, so that we can make better decisions and actually live a full life like Jesus tells us. But I'm not going to tell you guys that submission to God or those boundaries and those rules is going to be easy. That would be lying, and I'm not going to do that to you guys. I don't want to lie to you. So the submitting to God is not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy for a couple of reasons. One, it's often going to make you go against the cultural norms that we live in. When everybody's going one way, it might be calling you to go a different direction, and that's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. The other reason, which is sometimes even harder, is because it might call you to go against what you want. Because you're like, man, I really want this thing over here, but I know that God's calling me to be over here, but that thing looks so nice. But I'm called to be over here, and that's going to be really hard to face because you're just like, I want that, though. I don't want this, but I want that. But submitting to God and what he has for you is saying, okay, I'll be over here. I'll stay over here. The beauty, though, of submission to God and like the value of it, because it is so worth it, guys, because you're like, oh, that sounds really hard. I don't want to do that. But it's so valuable for one huge reason. And James kind of continues on and talks about it right now. He says, submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. That is the core and the beauty of submitting to God. When we're wanting all these things and the next thing and the cool people, and we want people to like us, or we want these people to think we're cool or fit in or stand out or whatever it is, oftentimes it comes from a hole or an emptiness we feel inside that we're trying to fill up. We're like, if I just have this, if I hang out with them, if I just have that thing, then I'll have a full life. Then I'll be free. Then I'll be full and happy. But oftentimes, those things cause more emptiness. But when we submit to God, we draw near to him, and he draws near to us. And it's not that he was far away, it's just that we finally allowed him to be near, to be in our lives. Because before we're like, nah, I'm going to go this way. You can just stay back there. But now we're like, no, I'm going to choose your way, so I'm going to go towards you. And he was already right there, drawing close to us. So how do we do this? How do we submit to God, submit our lives to God? The biggest thing, and I want us to, we can learn this from the life of Jesus, who did submission to God perfectly, is to lean into prayer. When you're faced with that choice of, what do? I want to go this way, but you're telling me to go this way, is to lean into prayer. So many times we see Jesus take time out of his day, out of his busy ministry schedule, to go spend time with God, to lean into prayer and to submit in prayer. And I want to take a second to just highlight what those prayers kind of look like, because so often I find myself when I'm praying being like, oh God, I really like this, and just talking the desires out, which is okay. You can tell God the desires of your heart. That is a good thing. But the kind of prayers I'm talking about are a step further than that. It's that of tell God your desires, but it's one step further. So let's read one of Jesus's most famous ones. Right before he died, he said this, and going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. Not as I will, but as you will. He laid out his desire of God, I'm human and I really don't want to die. It's not what I want. But not what I want, but what you want. I want what you want, God. And that is the prayers that I encourage you guys to begin praying as you're looking at, what is God calling me to? What is my next step? What is the thing that he has for me? It's that not what I want, God, but what you want. Making sense? We tracking? Awesome. So in this, like I said, it's not going to be easy, especially in those moments when you're like, I I really, really, really want this, but I know that God wants this, and I'm feeling torn. The biggest encouragement I can tell you, and we see this in Jesus' life as well, is to don't do it alone. I don't know what God is calling you to, or what next step he's calling you to do, what he's calling you to submit to him. I don't know it. But I can say, don't do it alone. Don't be like, I'm just going to do it by myself. Because if anybody could say that, it's Jesus. Because he's literally God in the flesh. He could be like, I'm God. I can do this on my own. We're good. But he didn't. Instead, he chose to have people around him to do life with, to do ministry with, to do what God was calling him to. He had people in his life. We were created for community. We were not created to just be off on our own. We were created to be in community. So, whatever God is calling you to do, don't do it alone. Talk to your group, your friends, your small group leader, whoever is also seeking after God and submitting to him. And they can help you in that. When you're like, oh man, I really want this, but over there, and they're like, oh, come on, bro, we got this. We can go over here and submit to God, and we can see what he does. And it's so much better, and it's so life-giving to have those people in your life that you're both pushing each other closer to Jesus. So if you're struggling with that loneliness or that emptiness in your heart, if you've been realizing that you're like, man, I've just been chasing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, or I thought that hanging out with these people were gonna fill me up and fill that hole that I'm feeling, but you're realizing that it's not, and it just leaves a bigger hole, and you've never invited Jesus into your life or invited him into your heart, can I just say, please don't leave here today without doing that. Don't leave here without inviting him into that. He's not going to force himself on you. He's not going to be like, well, you have to. He's just waiting for you to be like, I recognize this hole. God, would you come in? I want you in my life. Would you fill me up right now? Because that hole that you're feeling, the absolute only thing that is going to fill it is Jesus. Because that was what it was designed for. That's what that hole is feeling, is I need Jesus in my life. So whatever you guys do in submitting to God, lean into prayer and don't do it alone. I'm going to leave you guys with a question that I want you guys to think about as the worship team comes out and as we sing the last song of worship. I want to ask you guys, what is the thing that God is calling you to submit to him? Is it your life? Is it your future? Is it your past? Whatever it is, I want you guys to pray about it, think about it. If you're struggling with all of this and you're like, I have a lot of questions, I'm not sure I'm there yet, feel free to come talk to me. Talk to Connor, talk to a small group leader. We'd love to walk you guys through that, to walk with you guys in that. But reach out to us if you have those questions. So I'm going to pray for us, and then we'll worship. Hey, Jesus, thank you so much for your presence in our lives. Thank you for what you've done for us and what we get to do with you. Lord, I just ask that you come be in us. Show us the things that you want us to submit to you, the things that you're calling us to, and thank you that your dreams for us are so much bigger than ours. Be with us today as we go to small groups and talk more about it. And just thank you, God, that you fill that hole inside of us. In Jesus' name, amen.